Okay, we're going to look at Chapter 6, Input and Output. So first, what is input? Input is any data or instructions that are used by a computer. Input devices are hardware used to translate words, sound, images, and actions that people understand into a form that the system unit can process. So you're probably most familiar with the keyboard, so we're going to look at the keyboard entry first. Traditional keyboards are just full-size, rigid, rectangular keyboards. These are the ones you see most often in the classrooms. Ergonomic keyboards, however, are similar to traditional keyboards, but the keyboard arrangement is a little different so that it changes the direction that your palm rests. These are designed specifically to alleviate wrist strain associated with repetitive motion of typing. There's, of course, wireless keyboards, and there's PDA keyboards and virtual keyboards, and I'll let you read these because I don't want to bore you. I'm sure you can read as well as I can talk. Of course, keyboards have different features. Some of the features include a combined numeric keypad. Some keyboards allow you to toggle certain features on and off. Combination keys perform an action when held down with another key, and this can be something that can be programmed into your computer as well. So let's talk about pointing devices. The one that you're most familiar with probably is the mouse, of course. Typically, an optical mouse will not have any moving parts and emits a senses light to detect mouse movements. Mechanical mouse, hopefully you're not using one of these. These are the ones that had the ball in the middle that would always get kind of dirty, and you'd either have to clean or buy a new mouse. Of course, there's cordless mice, and they're very nice to have, and they're handy. They can either emit an infrared light wave, or they can do our radio frequency. There are some devices like a trackball, and they have a roller ball, and people typically like to use these back in the 80s and 90s. I don't see too many of them anymore, however, and of course the one that you see all the time on laptops are touch surfaces, and of course this has moved on into screens, so we have touch screens, and this is what you would have normally on your phone as well. And on some keyboards they provided, instead of a touchpad, they would have a pointing stick, or sometimes it was in addition to a touchpad. Some people just enjoyed pointing sticks so that they could move the mouse around kind of like a joystick would. So, and of course I've already mentioned touch screens. And there's different types of technology that enables touch screens. Some of them are simply just two pieces of conductors coming together that have different resistances, where they crisscross. That resistance is known. Some of them use infrared light. Others use capacitive touches. There's multi-screens, which I just got a new multi-screen board in my school or in my classroom, and it's really nice. And of course, a lot of your cell phones are multi-screens, and I'm sure some of you guys even have computers that have multi-screen or multi-touch screens is what I meant to say. A joystick, you're probably pretty familiar with joysticks. This is what they use on computer games and game controls. Some of them can detect just varying pressure, and some of them are sensitive to speed, direction. Of course, they're sensitive to direction, you would hope. A stylus is a pen-like device commonly used with tablets, PCs, and PDAs, and the most recent thing is that the iPads now, the largest iPad, has a stylus embedded in it, and this is something that originally was not part of the plan for the iPad. So let's move on to scanning devices. So an optical scanner, also known simply as a scanner, accepts documents consisting of text and or images and converts them to machine-readable form. These devices do not recognize individual letters or images, rather they recognize light and dark and colored areas that make up individual letters or images. So there's different types. There's the flatbed, which is just your normal, you just lay the document down, you close the lid, and it scans it. There's a portable one that you just feed into it and it scans it. And then there's, of course, a document feeder that pulls the document in. It can be either single-sided or double-sided. Some other different types of scanning devices, things like card readers that can actually go in and read the information on a card that you give it. There's magnetic card readers, and these are just encoded the cards themselves are encoded information in some sort of a magnetic strip. And of course, the card reader is meant to pick up that magnetic strip. This is like on the back of your credit card or debit card. Of course, there's also RFID readers and chips. So you probably didn't realize it, but most, well, I should say most, but more expensive items that you buy at stores normally have an RFID chip, and they're very, very inexpensive. And what happens is that whenever the chip comes through a magnetic field, more specifically, a changing magnetic field, this gives the chip power, which then sends back some information, a radio signal back to the receiver, and along with an encoded message, if you will, a data stream that just tells it what it is. So this is where, a lot of times you'll see somebody walking out of a store, and all of a sudden, the alarm will go off and say, please, return to the store. That's because the RFID tag might not have been removed. Okay, so let's take a look at some more scanning devices. Barcode readers. You've probably seen the barcodes in the back of, on your products. Of course, there's a way to read them. They just contain little photoelectric cells that can pick up the dark and light bars on the barcodes. Used with barcode system typically are universal product codes, or UPC codes. This is what we normally see on the products that we buy. There's also some character and mark recognition devices. Character and mark recognition devices are scanners that are able to recognize special characters and marks. So there's, of course, a magnetic ink character recognition. This is what banks use to read the numbers for, like, what checking account is going into, what bank code it's going to. There's optical character recognition. OCR just uses special pre-printed characters that can be read by light sources and changed into machine-readable code. And there's optical mark recognition. And this just senses the presence or absence of a mark, such as a pencil mark. This is where you'll see this using tests sometimes. They're little scantrons. And OCR, most phones have the ability now to do OCR. I know that with my phone I can just take a picture of something and it'll actually go in and it'll go through a special software that can actually bring text out of whatever I took a picture of. So it's really cool. So let's go ahead and talk about image capturing devices, talking about cameras, digital cameras. Obviously, they're made to record images digitally. I can remember my first digital camera. It had a little 3.5-inch floppy disk you'd put in it, and I think it could hold like 10 or 12 photos on a floppy disk, and we were just, we thought that was great. But in reality, compared to today's, it was just horrible types of quality. I mean, I think it was a 640 by 480 picture, and very, very grainy, and it wouldn't, unless you had absolutely great light, it wouldn't take a very good picture. But back in the early 90s, that was great. That was awesome to have a 640 by 480 digital picture of whatever you wanted to take, and you could take, hundreds of these pictures as long as you had plenty of discs to record them to. So, of course, digital video cameras record motion digitally on a disc or in the camera's memory. Again, most of these digital cameras, they're built into your phones now. So is the video cameras. However, if you want higher end quality, then you're going to have to go with a device that's specifically for that, like an SLR camera, or there are some digital video cameras out there that have excellent optics, and you can really tell the difference whenever you see one of these videos made with one of the more expensive cameras, obviously. Okay, so web cameras are just specialized digital video cameras that capture images and send them to a computer for broadcast over the internet. And with webcams, something that you plug into the internet, or something that you plug into your computer, and your computer's hooked up to the internet and it's on 24/7. Some of us leave our computers on 24/7. You just really have to be thinking about, well, what happens if my computer gets broken into? And it does happen. I mean, we've all seen the news clips where, people have opened up cameras on phones through some specialized software. People have opened up, baby cameras and all sorts of things. Just be thinking where that camera is pointing and what the people are seeing, because they're probably, obviously the people that are hacking into computers are not up to anything good. So let's go on to audio input devices. Audio input devices convert sounds into a form that can be processed by the system unit. The most widely used audio input device is called the microphone. That's what I'm speaking into right now. Okay, voice recognition systems obviously use a microphone, a sound card, and special software. These systems allow users to operate computers and to create documents using voice commands. You've used one several times probably, I'm sure, using your phones or even calling up companies where, obviously your phone has one. Let me go back to your phone. Okay, so voice recognition systems just use software to decipher what we're saying, taking that analog input and making it a digital input, and then going through some algorithms to kind of figure out our speech patterns. You've probably used it with Siri. You probably, if you have an Apple machine or an Apple phone and an iPhone. If you're using an Android phone, you've probably used Google Now or OK Google. These work extremely well because they can not only recognize pretty typical speech, but it also builds upon how you're talking. So it builds up like a little database of little nuances of how you say things based on how you correct it. So it's kind of interesting. But in addition to that, several companies, many companies actually use these voice recognition systems to answer phones now to help route the calls. So what is output? Well, output is processed data or information, and typically it takes the form of text, graphics, photos, audio, and or video. Output devices are any hardware used to provide or to create output. They translate information that has been processed by the system unit into a form that humans can understand. Okay, so monitors. Obviously you're looking at one right now. This just technically presents visual images of text and graphics. Some things that affect clarity are things like resolution, dot pitch, refresh rate, size or viewable size, and aspect ratio. And I'm going to let you guys read through that. There's no sense in me reading this if it's here. More monitors. Flat panel monitors are much thinner and require less power to operate than CRTs. CRT stands for cathode ray tube. Almost all of today's flat panel monitors are a type of LCD. There's a passive matrix or dual scan monitors create images by scanning the entire screen. Active matrix or thin film transistors, TFT monitors, do not scan down the screen. Instead, each pixel is independently activated. They can display more colors with better clarity. Active matrix monitors are more expensive and require more power. So here's another type of monitor. OLED, organic light emitting diode, is a newer technology. Requires less power. It has a longer battery life for whatever you're displaying it with. And then of course it's typically thinner displays. The older standard was the cathode ray tube, and these are pretty similar to television. These monitors are typically placed directly on the system unit or on a desktop. Primary advantages are that they're low cost and excellent resolutions. Primary disadvantages, they're huge, they're less energy efficient, and they occupy a considerable amount of space. And you would probably be very hard pressed to try to buy a new cathode ray tube. Most all computers now obviously use either LED or OLED now, or LCD, I'm sorry. So let's go on. Let's talk more about other types of monitors. There's e-book readers, and these are handheld book-sized devices that display text and graphics. I believe that they use something called e-ink, which works differently than LED or OLED. This is actually caused from a difference in static charge, which is kind of neat. Okay, and there's data projectors, and these are just connected to the microcomputers and project computer output just as it would appear on a monitor. Okay, high definition television, HDTV, the merger of microcomputers and television. HDTV delivers a much clearer and more detailed widescreen picture than regular television. And a current trend is they're putting streaming abilities in HDTV, such as I think TCL or TLC, I can't remember which one, now has Roku built into it, and of course Samsung has their own version of Netflix and Hulu and all that built into their system, so it's kind of neat. Let's move on. Printers translates information that has been processed by a system unit and presents the information on paper. Again, some features that you need to keep in mind is things like resolution, just talks about clarity, color capabilities, how fast it is, and of course how much memory the printer has. And really and truly, memory makes a big difference because that kind of tells how big of files you can print at one time. And of course, there are several different types. There's an inkjet printer, and these just spray ink at high speeds onto the surface of paper. It's the most widely used printers, available in black only or color. It's reliable, it's quiet, and it's relatively inexpensive. Typically, inkjet printers produce between 17 and 19 pages per minute of black only, or between 13 and 15 pages of color output. What's interesting about inkjet printers, even though they're still probably the most widely used, people kind of moved over and started using laser, and now there's kind of a shift back to ink. And that's because just, you know, one of the issues with ink is it's relatively inexpensive for the device, but it's kind of expensive for the ink itself. However, recently they've started making bigger ink cartridges, and companies have really kind of started moving back over in that direction. And let's go ahead and talk about laser printers. These just use a laser beam to produce images with excellent letters and graphic quality. It's available in black only or in color. They're reliable. They're pretty quiet. They're definitely louder than an inkjet printer. They're more expensive than inkjet printers to buy. Typically, especially if you want to buy, you know, a better one. They're faster than inkjets, and they are used in applications requiring high quality output. There's two different types. There's personal and there's shared, of course. And you know, one of the biggest benefits in laser printers is that typically it creates a copy or a print that's much cheaper than an inkjet. So here's some other types of printers. Thermal printers just use heat elements to produce images on heat-sensitive paper. This is what you get whenever you get back normally on receipts. And this is why, like, if you leave a receipt in a car, sometimes they'll change colors. There's dot matrix printers, which is actually one of the oldest types of printers. And, you know, it's actually, you would think, okay, an older technology would be cheaper, but they're actually one of the most expensive type of printers. You can't, they're very difficult to find, and they're used in applications that require you to have carbon copies now. So they're very expensive printers. I mean, I think the last time I looked, which was, it's been a few years, but they were over $1,000. Plotters are special purpose printers for producing maps, images, and architectural and engineering drawing. Photo printers are obviously special purpose printers designed to print photo quality images. And portable printers are designed to work with a notebook computer and maybe inkjet or laser printer, print in black and white or color, and connect via USB or parallel port, or some of them I'm sure connect Bluetooth or some other wireless protocol. So let's talk about audio output. The audio output devices translate audio information from the computer into sounds that people can understand. The most widely used audio output devices are speakers and headphones. Digital music players, also known as digital media players, are specialized devices for storing, transferring, and playing audio files. So there are some popular ones like the iPod, the Creative Zen, Microsoft Zune, and iRiver, and these are older ones. And of course, you know, a lot of people have just started using their phones since then. So let's talk about combination input-output devices. The fax machine is probably the most prevalent. And of course, this is just, it uses typical phone lines to send and receive information, and then converts it into basically either from a scanner or back into a printed document. Multifunction devices, or MFDs, also known as all-in-ones, typically combine the capability of scanner, print, and faxes and copy machines. Internet telephones are specialized input and output devices for receiving and sending voice communications. So why are we talking about this? Well, voice over IP. It's huge, and I remember whenever I was, this has been about 10 years ago, I adopted a voice over IP system. I think it was Vonage, because I moved out to Weatherford. And I wanted to have a local Fort Worth number. This is whenever you used your cell phone, you know, you were paying per minute, so it wasn't really realistic for me to use my cell phone to call people from Weatherford to here. And I didn't want to have a Weatherford phone number because from Weatherford to Fort Worth, it's obviously a long distance. However, by using a voice over IP phone, I got a local number, and since it was over the internet, it didn't matter if it was, you know, local or not, and I was able to make, you know, as many calls as I wanted to Fort Worth from Weatherford. Now, what's really interesting is that my girlfriend, who later became my wife, went on a trip to Europe, and we'd been dating maybe 3 or 4 months at the time, and I knew I was going to miss her, and it was going to be for a week, and I was like, I knew they couldn't call, and I was like, well, just take my Vonage box along with the phone and see if you can make calls. And they were calling me from, I think it was Switzerland, on the voice over IP, and it sounded like they were next door. There was a little bit of latency, and a latency just means that it takes a little longer, or it lags a little bit. So like when she would say hi, it might take a half a second. It was just long enough to where you could kind of tell, hey, something's kind of off with this conversation. But it was still pretty cool to get a call from around the world, So let's go ahead and go on. There's 3 major approaches to voice over IP. There's computer to computer, computer to traditional phone line, and traditional phone line to traditional phone line. Or I shouldn't say traditional phone line, it's traditional telephone to traditional telephone. So this would be like the traditional telephone to traditional telephone would be like my phone, my voice over IP phone, to someone else's phone. Computer to telephone would be like if you go online, I know Google has Google Voice, to where you can use your computer as a phone. You can actually call people up right from your computer. And of course, computer to computer is like Skype. Okay, let's talk about drones and robots. So first of all, drones or aerial vehicles take input from the controller and send back videos and sound to the user. Right now, they're very cost effective. And of course, robots, well, they're used in surgery and all sorts of other applications. They can use microphones, cameras, and other sensors as input. Virtual reality is just created in 3D through computers for a virtual experience. Headgear with gloves have sensors to collect data from that work with software. And if you're not familiar with Google goggles, you probably ought to try it out. It's pretty cool. You just slip your cell phone into a set that sets over your eyes. It has corrective lenses in it, and it kind of immerses you into a 3-dimensional world. It's pretty neat. Well, that ends this set of notes, and I hope you got something out of it. Thanks. Bye.